How did your high
Hello
school
there.
crush turn out as an adult? He had a roller coaster of a life. I admire him more than ever and more than most people I know, but can't wrap my head around why I ever found him physically attractive. Maybe it was always just his heart. By age 25, he had a PhD, a wife, and was a captain in the Navy. By 30, he had 2 PhDs, a small business where he made a metric ton of money, and his wife was pregnant. By 31, he was diagnosed with stage 4 skin cancer that swiftly spread to a few other places. He was told he had a minimal chance of making it 5 more years. Even with the best health insurance money can buy, it still basically wiped him out. 7 years later, he's living a comfortable but not extravagant life as a civilian contractor for the Navy, with the same wife and 2 happy, healthy kids, and spends most of his free time advocating for better public health care. Damn, I think I have a crush on him too. Story 2. Back when I was younger and crushing hard, I got an AOL instant messenger and had gotten my crush's screen name from a friend. I worked up the nerve to start a conversation with him, and soon after some awkward small talk, he sent me a message in Comic Sans. Black background, red lettering, and in French. I then went to Google for translation and found out he had just called me a pig, in French. Being a seemingly awkward and chubby teenager, I was literally crushed. The heartbreak was only made worse by remembering that a few weeks prior, I had selected to take French class the next year and couldn't change it. Years later, now that I've blossomed, he follows me on every social media platform. Has reached out a couple of times to try and flirt or hang out. Hard pass. I believe he's moved away and is a teacher now. The "now you want me because I'm hot" attempt. Story 3. She worked with the Obama administration. I forgot in what capacity, and got married to a politician's son. Don't remember, don't care to look up. She's happy, and that's the only thing that matters. Oh, she was also our school's valedictorian. She was so busy with her job she could not organize our high school reunion, so that's a plus. I wasn't head over heels for her. I admired her, but I knew I wasn't for her. Then there's another crush of mine. We ran into each other years after graduation at the grocery store. After talking, I asked her out to dinner at my house. I pulled out all the stops, I bought rainbow trout fillets and made all the fixings. 6:30 rolls around, I opened the door and, who the hell is this man behind her? Oh, this is my fiancé, she tells, neglected to tell me about me. Turns out they wanted to sell me on some MLM thing. She tried to cross the threshold. I put my arm out and asked them politely to leave. I turned away from the door and had my saddest meal I ever ate. Story 4. They're all stunning and wildly successful. One in particular was a crush with a similar name to mine, dating back from my elementary school, which turned out to be the longest crush, an entire decade, I've ever had and still appearing in a looping dream sequence to this day, especially after that bitter and frankly traumatic rejection before we parted ways when I confessed to her. At that point, we were classmates for 5 years and were going to different schools. After the separation, that's when the dreams began, and every time I woke up, I'm feeling emotional all over again. It took me another painful 5 years before I stopped crushing on her, but the dreams never stopped. Just last week, I had an update to the dream sequence where we actually talked for the first time in a decade of Groundhog Day levels of dreams. I know, it's pathetic. Life update edit in that particular crush. She's currently aspiring to be an architect and had an equally cool boyfriend, so I doubt she ever looked back in her past as much as I do. I recently tried to follow her on social media to get a life update from herself, but she won't accept my requests. So I won't force her. Story 5. Oh, one I can comment on. To be honest, this is more junior high crush than high school, but the story stands. Back in my first day of 7th grade, I just moved up to a new school and I met a girl named Charlie. Well, Charlie had a twin, whose name was Kristen. Charlie insisted on introducing me to Kristen and yelled at her to come across the lunch area to us. Kristen was very clumsy and tipped and almost landed on top of me. I fell head over heels. I, however, was way too afraid to say anything. A few years later, I got out of the Navy and went home and needed a place to stay for a few days. Charlie offers Christine's spare room. I moved in the middle of the night, I saw Kristen for the first time since 2007. And my jaw dropped. She was always attractive, but I guess she became a health psycho after having 2 kids with her ex. Instantly, my crush reappeared, but this time I had the post-Navy confidence and said something. Turned out she fell for me back in 2007 and that day too, but she was quite scared and nervous. Within a week of moving in, we were dating. It's been almost 4 years and we have added 2 more kids to the lot. Please send help to so many kids. Still very much in love and happy. She turned out great. A wonderful, smart, caring woman who is into dumplings and cheesy romances. Story 6. My fiancée admitted that during high school she had this massive crush on me. Saw how well I did with kids, but she never worked up the courage to tell me. Had a few girlfriends, none of them lasted. I couldn't figure out if it was me or not. I called up my future fiancée one day out of the blue. We hadn't spoken in a year. I asked if she would like to hang out. She asked me for help with her studies that night. I don't know why I called her in the first place. Never realized how pretty she was until she walked down the stairs to greet me. She was in her PJs, but that didn't matter to me. I was suddenly giddy. A few days later, she started scrolling through our contacts, asking if there's anyone there that I like. I told her yes, and she started pointing out every vaguely female-like name. Hers was at the very bottom because of her last name. When she gets there, she responds, "All that's left is my name." Yep. 1, 2. Oh, it's me? Well, damn. That was 5 years ago. I honestly consider myself very lucky to be with her, with a number of things that had to go just right. Story 7. I went to a Catholic school. It was an amazing singer and super popular. I was definitely not either of those things. Pretty sure I didn't know I existed. I went to study architecture and I wound up becoming an electrician. I'm a woman, by the way. A few years later, I'm at a job up on a ladder pulling wire with one of the old-timers. The wire was stuck, so in good tradesman fashion, we were cussing up a storm at each other and the wire until it finally poked through. As I was pulling it out, I looked down to see this guy just staring at me from the bottom of the ladder. He didn't say anything. He just stared for a few moments and then he walked away. You could tell he was trying to place me. I recognized him but couldn't place him for a few moments, and then I had a thought. That looked a lot like a whale, but a fat version. Later that day, I went and visited mom number 2, and she had a church bulletin sitting on her counter. She had wandered away for a moment to do something, so I picked it up to spend some time until she was done. The bulletin had a section for announcing engagements or weddings, and my jaw dropped. Here was a photo of him with another girl from our high school, newly engaged. It had been him staring at me from the bottom of the ladder. His lady friend must have been feeding him really well, because he plumped up good. I was happy for him all around, but didn't see him again after that day. Story 8. They're all still extremely attractive, but their lives are that of nightmares. Kids with multiple fathers, no real career path in their 30s, still relying on their looks to get by, etc. Back in high school, it was around 300 to 350 pounds, and naturally, none of my high school crushes were into me. I managed to do pretty well since I was a trained musician then. Not a school band, was trained in guitar and bass, but never had luck with any of my crushes. I jumped around to 6 high schools, so my list of high school crushes was probably larger than most. Around 5 years ago, I ended up dropping to around 180, started riding Harleys, and decided to get back out there and catch up for lost time. I was on a 7 or so year dry spell at that point. I ended up hooking up with many of my high school crushes. To be clear, they all either reached out to me and or initiated. I wasn't purposefully trying to go out and meet up with my high school crushes. In the end, it didn't provide any great sense of validation and or vindication like you see in the movies. It's ultimately a shame though. All that losing the way it did was make me jaded and afraid to get close to anyone. I have severe trust issues now as a result of everything I've gone through by trying to explore, date, catch up for lost time, etc. I guess it can only be used and thrown away so many times before you decide to stay in the trash can to make it stop. Regardless, thanks for letting me share. Story 9. Back in high school, there was this girl who was hot. She was a cheerleader, really popular and beautiful. I was a typical shy nerd. I never had a chance to get close to her. We actually did end up talking for a while when we were out on a high school ski trip. We both had to leave our respective hotel rooms because other people were busy there. We ended up hanging out for a while around the fireplace in the reception area. The next day, someone took a picture of the two of us where I had my arm around her waist. That picture ended up in the yearbook. Fast forward nearly 25 years, we connected via Facebook and I found out that she was living in New York City. My now wife and I were planning a trip to New York, so we arranged to meet for dinner. My crush was still a great-looking woman, but her personality was way off. We met up and went to a bar in the city, meeting up with her boyfriend there. She treated him badly, acting like a typical entitled little kid. I love the high school memories of my crush, but I didn't like the woman I met 25 years later. Story 10. He turned out challenged by life, but is still a super good person and attractive as hell. Honestly. He went to a different school than I did, but our clubs worked together. We had crushes on one another, but we were dating other people. All 4 of us were good friends. I thought he was way too cool for me. Very confident and fun and artistic. He obviously likes me, but I figured he was out of my league. Very attractive, alt, into all kinds of great indie and punk music, and sporty but not too much of a jock at all. very empathetic. Back then, I would always fall asleep in his lap while he played with my hair. This was totally cool with our partners. Little did I know, or would have believed, I was the person to him. He thought I was the one and super cool and attractive, and he always wanted to spend time with me. We didn't talk about it. We're both committed, even if we knew our relationship weren't forever. We loved him. My partner from then is still my best friend now. He always kept in touch a little, checked in on me, sent me a message every few months to remind me he believed in me or hoped I had a good day. We hung out once or twice a year and always each walked away smitten and maybe a little sad. And went back to being mirrored in our lives. Fast forward to 2019. He was going to beauty school and reached out to me to see if I wanted a badly needed, in hindsight, haircut. After that, we started hanging out for one reason or another once every couple of weeks. Then once a week, at least. Both seeing people but consensually non-monogamous, though I was at the time very stuck in a mistreating years-long relationship with a man who had groomed me and held me back in a lot of ways. It was uncanny to get to know him again. We discovered so many similarities and alignments and things to teach one another, and when we finally had our first kiss, it was earth-shattering. It felt like I was falling into the right timeline after thinking I was on the right track for so long. Slowly, I began to realize that I could take back my life and did. Standing up for my own needs and wants is what ultimately ended my relationship with a mistreating ex. And then in January of 2022, my love proposed to me. We got a puppy, and last month, we eloped. I'd say it's turned out pretty great. Holy cow. That is one hell of a beautiful way to describe the first kiss. Story 11. Mine threw away a wrestling scholarship and dropped out of college after 1 year when he couldn't stay academically eligible. It was easy on the eyes, but not a lot going on upstairs. A few years after graduation, I ran into him and a bunch of people we graduated with at a bar in our hometown when I was home visiting my parents. His fiancée, now wife, retched all over the bar bathroom, and despite the fact that I had met her roughly 20 minutes earlier, I was the only one who was willing to help her and keep her from the pool of her own mess in the bathroom. It was kind of awkward given the history, but I wasn't going to let the girl on the bathroom floor. He didn't say thank you, and I basically carried her back to him after we got her cleaned up. They made a bunch of jokes about how we did the same thing a week earlier, and she sat slumped in a bar stool until one of her friends showed up to take her home. And he went back to playing pool with his friends. I learned that apparently this is a fairly standard Friday night for them. Basically, dodge that. Story 12. She's my best friend. We became boyfriend and girlfriend for a brief second in high school, like sophomore or junior year, and went our separate ways. We attended different colleges, married different people, had our own families, and all throughout that time we stayed in touch and friends. When I struggled with drinking problems in my 40s, she'd take my intoxicated calls and quietly tell me to get better in various non-judgmental ways. 3 years sober. When her husband came down with a debilitating neurological disorder and she went bankrupt, I did my level best to encourage her and listen. Nothing like what she did for me. She has a great job now. She had been a very successful freelancer but needed medical instability. Her husband is still in very bad shape. But even though we are 2,500 miles apart, we still talk. She still laughs at my stupid jokes, and I still do my best to make her smile when I can. We've never done anything together. We were impossibly young when we met. I guess that is a bit odd to some extent. Reading the top threads, it seems especially odd that we didn't destroy both our marriages in some stupid fling. Our spouses know we have stayed in touch. Her husband has even expressed profound gratitude to me for being there when he's literally incapacitated and unable to talk to her. It might not be the "and then we got married" cheesy movie ending kind of thing, but it is really nice to have a friend that you can talk to for over 30 years. Story 13. Going to pick the more interesting one. Messaged me about 15 years after high school saying she had always been thinking about me and was going to visit, but was living far away. True to her word, she showed up. We fell for each other hard the month she was home. All sorts of craziness ensued. Went to visit her, still really into each other, but went home and that ended it. For 2 years. Another message, more great times together, drops away for another couple of years. Next message. We go on vacation, hit it off, again, as if these gaps had never happened, but end up going out with someone else. I say never mind and start dating someone else. She shows up in my apartment and destroys both of our relationships in one night. We end up staying close for a few months, but stuff is getting weird. I'm done with all of it at this point. Met a wonderful woman and got married in 6 weeks. She gets engaged and then gets married, knocks at my door almost a year later asking me to leave my wife. Tell her no. Now we do not speak, but both have 2 kids, wish her well, but don't care enough to bother checking. Leave it in the past, folks. Story 14. We were best friends. We had a crush on each other, but I didn't want to date her because, to be perfectly honest, I was immature and switched girlfriends every couple months. I didn't want to turn my closest friend into another ex. Dumb logic, I know, but I was a kid. We stayed friends throughout our 20s, but lived in different states. She had a child with her first boyfriend and then had a serious relationship with a woman for a few years. I was also in a serious relationship for 9 years. Both of our relationships ended and we started talking more regularly again, just like when we were best friends growing up. We're both largely the same, but grown in respectable ways. She's in medical school after spending time as an anatomy professor. I'm a successful commercial photographer. We've been together for over a year and a half. Her daughter has become my daughter, and we're getting married this summer. Story 15. I had several, and even dated some of them during or after high school. There was one, though, that I had a huge crush on, and she actually shut me down a couple times. I asked her out over AIM, and she rejected me instantly. Eventually, we became kind of friends and partied together a few times. Every time I tried to get with her, she'd shut me down. I moved on after I graduated. She was a year below me, and during her senior year, she dropped out and eventually got put into rehab. She apparently was on and off for some things for years, and last I checked, she was living at home with her parents and 2 kids. She was like 24. Her baby daddy was in jail for breaking into a store to steal wait for it, substances. So yeah, even though I highly doubt we would have dated for a long time or anything, I still feel like I kinda dodged that. Even though she rejected me multiple times, I feel pretty bad for how her life turned out. Hopefully it's better than it was 8 years ago, last time I saw her. Story 16. I'm honestly not sure. I haven't been able to figure it out. I've had a crush on this girl for a very long time. I've known her since 3rd grade, been friends with her since 5th, and infatuated with her since 6th to 7th. High school came and went. I asked her out once, but she was a popular kid, and once people started hearing about it, they started up a rumor around the school that I was stalking her. Apparently, from what I heard, she got scared and then threatened to file a restraining order, so I didn't talk to her anymore. For some reason unbeknownst to me, she invited me to her graduation party. She was nice to me. Her boyfriend at the time was cool and her parents knew me, which I thought was a bit odd, but okay. And everyone was surprisingly chill. I exchanged FB and life went on. It's been 5 years now, I'm out of the service, and we ended up actually talking a bunch during my deployment. She's single again, frankly a bit depressed. Life hasn't been great to her lately, but I still like her. We had a Snapchat streak almost a year long and we actually did talk. Every day. We made plans to hang out, got to know each other more, talked about the future. After I got out, I planned to buy a house. And while I got everything settled, I would come live with my parents for a bit in my hometown. I bought her some gifts on the road trip. We had plans to hang out on New Year's, all was good. Problem was, once I got here, she suddenly stopped talking to me. I have no clue what's going on. I'm worried for her, but I don't want to push the situation, especially considering previous issues. I just don't think she actually likes me, even as a friend. Maybe she was just being nice to me for some reason. I hate it. I don't know what I did wrong. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 17. I had tons of crushes throughout high school, but one of them had been my crush since elementary, and we briefly dated in junior high and were friendly in high school. My last year of high school I had to cut short because my family and I were moving back to my home country. But the last month I was there, we saw each other a few times and messed around. He lived near me. He had a kid shortly after graduating from high school and just recently married his baby mama after years of dating. His kid is adorable, and his wife seems pretty cool. They make a good, quirky couple. He's also the lead singer of a rock band that's moderately famous in the town we lived in. My other lifelong crush from elementary to high school is now a computer scientist. Probably makes really good money, and the last I saw, he had a gorgeous foreign girlfriend he met in college. He doesn't interact much on social media, but about 10 months ago, he reached out on Facebook to say hi. The convo stopped after a while, but it was great to talk to him for a bit. I grew up in a small town in the American South and still have a ton of classmates from school on Facebook and Instagram. The big majority are already married. We're all in our mid-20s. Many got married straight out of high school or got pregnant and have multiple kids, some with different dads. Others graduated from college and are now professionals working in various companies. Some are still in grad school or in the process of applying, including me. And some are single and just having the time of their lives. A very few moved out to different countries and are working there now. It's pretty cool to see where we are all at this stage of life. Unfortunately, 2 of my high school classmates never made it to their mid-20s. A very popular classmate of mine I was friends with in junior high school passed away at 21 after swerving in a BMW and getting into an accident. Another ex-classmate recently passed away over some substances or something like that. Story 18. My childhood crush. I still cringe when I think about back then. See, I was the nerdier girl in the group of popular kids at school, so I often watched on the sidelines as all the boys would flirt with all of my friends, ask them to dance at school dances, and listen to all of my girlfriends' kissing stories and growth from there. The most attention I got would be the occasional pity case where my friends would try to force some poor cast out to date me or whatever. It was painful. I was a late bloomer, braces, glasses, no sense of style. The works. I at least prided myself with a great personality, easily able to make friends and being sporty. Plus, having 4 older, super cool brothers and sisters helped my social status in those rough years. Anyways, there was this one guy that I truly oogled over. Let's call him T. T was smart, charming, athletic, nice, handsome, all the bells and whistles. Everyone loved him. I always admired him from afar and cherished any fleeting interaction with him. Now the first day of 7th grade comes, and look who's assigned to the seat in the adjoining desk across from me. T. My dreams had been answered. So what do I do with this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Be awkward? No. Shy? No. Flirty? No. I turned into a taunter. I would steal his gel pens, write in his notebooks, tussle his hair, basically anything to get a reaction out of him. But one day I showed up and T isn't there and I noticed his desk is empty. It wasn't long before I noticed that he was now sitting on the opposite side of the room. My stomach dropped. I wasn't stupid. And sure enough, before lunch that day, I was pulled aside by my, luckily, very kind teacher and spoken to about boundaries and respecting my fellow classmates. Later, I found out his mother had written a letter to the school about my obnoxious behavior. I was so embarrassed and upset with myself that for the next 5 years, I avoided any interaction with T. Couldn't even look him in the eyes or participate in friendly banter. Years later, we ended up moving to the same city a few years after graduating from our respective universities. Luckily, the city's just large enough that it would be rare to run into each other, but I did fleetingly notice that T was living here as well. Well, a few years ago on St. Patty's Day, I'm out at the bars with a large group of my more newer adult friends and I saw some guys from high school. Cool. We ran over and hugged each other and did some hammered pleasantries. It was going to be a fun night. And out of the corner of my eye, I see T, looking as fine as ever. Now I should mention, I'm no longer the gawky, awkward kid I once was. I'm 5'6", 115 pounds, go to the gym daily, finally found a sense of style and the confidence I was lacking years ago. On this particular night, I'm wearing glittery white stilettos, tight green leggings, and a silky white V-neck crop top. I was single, and definitely flaunting it. Sure enough, T and I made eye contact, and it was lightning. We both stopped whatever conversation we were having and instantly made our way through the crowd to each other. I'll never forget the shock in his eyes as he looked me over and stammered, "The OP, is that you? You look amazing." We ended up catching over the next few hours. He's newly single. Our friends told me the ex was a miserable, not nice person to be around. Has a great job in finance and overall is doing pretty well. I mentioned how I too have a great job and we even touched on those embarrassing grade school days and how he always wondered why I was so nice to everyone but him. Facepalm. We danced, laughed, took snaps together, and we were sending them to mutual friends who were all making comments along the lines of, "Finally," or "Can't believe you two are together. Guess I didn't do as well as I thought I did in hiding my fondness of him." At one point, we were all walking to the next bar, a huge group of his friends and mine, and he pulled me into a small alley and passionately kissed me. I tried to play sexy cool, but my internal voice was screaming with joy. We get to the next bar and boom, the mood of him and his or our friends changes, like they saw a scary thing happen. His vindictive ex was there with that permanent scowl on her face she always has. I've met her a few times since then, and yes, she is genuinely not a nice person. She glared over T and all of us and for the rest of the night stood there right next to him, glaring at any girl that remotely spoke to him. So that was that. I went on to enjoy my night and keep this guess it wasn't meant to be story in my memory banks. He's no longer with not nice girl and we've casually run into each other briefly. We're both still successful and happy, but I'm now engaged to the most wonderful man and wish that T has found the same happiness. My girlfriend still asks what if you guys went together that night, or why didn't you call him the next day? We exchanged some texts, but I was happy being single and didn't want to get involved with any potential drama that he was clearly still going through with his ex. Story 19. I met her at the beginning of ninth grade during our orientation, and I thought she was super cute. We ended up getting grouped together for an icebreaker activity, and she was an absolute sweetheart too. This was the first real crush I think I ever had. First semester of high school, we had absolutely no classes together, and I basically never saw her after orientation day. Fast forward to second semester, and we have geography together. We talked during the class a lot, but I had the self-confidence of a wet napkin, so I never made an attempt to chat with her outside of school. She disappeared after that year, and I assumed she moved to another school. Fast forward to 12th grade. We had a class together. She was back. Turns out she did switch schools for about 6 months. Then she took some time off school to raise her kid. Whoops. For a teen mom, she seemed to have her life together. As best you can for a single mom. She was determined to get her diploma, had a plan for a college degree and a career after college, and talked about how much she loved her son and how smart he was for his age. She lost all her appeal for me, but damn did I respect the hell out of her for it. Fast forward about 4 years later, I'm sitting in a fast food restaurant at 11 p.m. waiting for my food, and a couple sloppy, intoxicated girls stumble through the door. One is bawling her eyes out, the other is trying to calm her down. Surprise! It was my ultimate high school crush. She recognized me and we chatted for a bit. Turns out she got into an argument with her boyfriend that night and she left and got intoxicated. After chatting for 10 minutes, she asked if she could spend the night with me. My brain went 100 miles a minute. On one hand, she was my high school crush. On the other, this was a whole bag of nope. It seemed like an opportunity to potentially grow a relationship with her, but I decided declining was smarter. A couple more years go by and the car breaks down, so I'm taking the bus to work. One of the stops was in front of a school. Sure enough, my crush gets on at the school, except this time I didn't recognize her. Luckily, she still recognized me. She had gone from 1 kid to 3, had some really rough-looking home tattoos, and has gained about 60 pounds. We caught up and chatted. She didn't seem very happy in life and was living off welfare with her third baby daddy. She was a shell of the person I knew in high school, and it was like all of her motivation to better herself went out the window years ago. It was super heartbreaking to see her like that, but I'm hoping we bump into each other again one day and this story would have a happier ending. Story 20. Girl 1 was kind of an awful person once I got to know her, trying to get other girls' boyfriends to cheat, take advantage of dudes who liked her to get them to pay for things, etc. Ended up marrying some friend of hers who offered to give her his check from being in the army. Then got her pregnant, then some other woman got pregnant. Last I heard, she got out of there and moved back to her parents. Girl 2 I met after I realized Girl 1 was a disaster of a person. A friend who knew about Girl 1, but not that I was off that train, told me he was into Girl 2, so I stepped back. Friend never makes a move and drags it out until right before graduation, all while I find out Girl 2 is crushing on me. I found out from that said friend she got married after she went to get her microbiology degree and seems happy. I'm happy that it all worked out for her so far. She really deserves it. Girl 3 was stuck between me and her cheating baby daddy. Her close friend was pushing hard for baby daddy over me. I ended up pushing her away because I didn't want to come between the kid's dad even though he was garbage. Baby daddy cheated again. Now she's with an awesome dude who treats her and her daughter super well, and it's awesome. Story 21. Too late to be seen, but why not? Crush number 1, graduated valedictorian, went to Harvard and eventually became a lawyer in the Obama administration. She's still working in the DC area, pretty sure, though I haven't talked to her in more than 20 years. Crush number 2 is a counselor at a rehab facility back home. Haven't really talked to her in years either. She has one of those pyramid scheme makeup company sales jobs in her spare time. I quit her on Facebook rather than be subjected to watching makeup videos all the time. Crush number 3, technically a college crush, is a registered nurse at a hospital back home. She has a kid, isn't married or in a stable relationship, but she seems to be doing okay. Crush number 4, eventually got married, had a kid, had a miscarriage, and I'm not really sure what she does, but I know she's super religious and homeschools her kid. Crush number 5, best friends of crush number 2, eventually had babies with a white supremacist and haven't been friends on Facebook with her in years because of her stance on minorities. She lived for like a year and a half in San Diego, so she has an experienced POV about race that I couldn't possibly understand, as I live in Toronto, where about 50% of the population is comprised of minorities, and work in an inner-city school in which no more than 3 of my students in any given year are white. Incidentally, crush number 2 eventually married a man of African-American descent, so she doesn't talk to crush number 5 anymore for obvious reasons. Story 22. I still dream of her. She was actually my high school sweetheart. I was awful to her. I neglected her and I took her for granted, and she loved me dearly. I planned to break up with her after high school. She was going to school in a different state, and I did not wish to maintain a long-distance relationship. Still, we kept in touch. One day, she met someone who expressed interest in her. My confidence was shattered. I panicked. I cried. And immediately the following Monday, I traveled to surprise her, take her from class, and win back her love. I took her to an aquarium. I got us a hotel for the weekend, and our love was rekindled. And from then on, I was determined to earn her love. Her parents didn't approve. They were devout Christians and knew I didn't believe in God, and it placed a considerable amount of stress in the relationship. So I faked it, for her and for us. She knew I could never be sincere in my belief, but she appreciated my effort. Eventually, our relationship had to be kept secret from her family. They could not tolerate me as an influence in her life anymore. So in secret, every other week, I would retrieve her from her school in the next state and bring her to stay with me for the weekend, before returning her before her classes on Monday. Eventually, she wished to return home to be closer with me. Her parents knew this. They despised me even more. One day, the original boy, expressing his interest in her, informed her that he was coming to town for work. She asked permission to spend time with him during his visit, and I told her she didn't need my permission. They spent a lot of time together that visit, and subsequent ones, and eventually she confessed that she wasn't being fair to me. And that was that. They married later on. His faith was more agreeable to her parents. They have a beautiful family. I'm truly happy she was able to find the life she wanted, but I'm not sure I ever got any closer from the end of that. Several partners later, that one still has pain. Story 23. One works as a supermarket cashier and has gained a lot of weight. Still cute when she smiles, but I haven't actually got to talk to her since not very long after I graduated high school. Another is going out with my best friend from high school. They have their moments where I think they have to be done after this, but it always works out. It's hard on them because he's in the military, so the only time that they get to be together is when he's on shore leave. Another one has become butch and is dating a girl. This one was weird because I had a crush on her right up until she started going out with this girl, which was in my freshman year of college. We had done some very couple-ish things. I'd seen her change more than once and we'd cuddled more than once, but my attraction to her went out right away when she got someone else. And the last one is the saddest because she's the one I felt the strongest about, and I haven't talked to her since she went to her college the first time. I should have asked her for a number back then, but I was too much of a hyper-nervous doofus. Oh, what if she takes it the wrong way? You stupid, she literally couldn't take it the wrong way since you're madly in love with her, and even if she gets upset, who gives a care? You're both going off to college and will likely never see each other again. Story 24. Mine is kind of sad. She lived a door or so down from me when we were kids and played together, but they moved a few miles away later and only saw her in school. We were in junior school together and moved in different circles. We also went to the same church, but she didn't come near as often as I had to. Kind of the same in high school, just say hi more or less. I called her Miss America because she seemed to have it all going for her. Very long blonde hair, great figure, winning smile. She was also the head cheerleader and was the class valedictorian from a class of close to 600. Her parents became friends after I left for the military, and this is how I found out about her life after high school. She went off to college in a full-ride scholarship. She got 2 degrees, one in biology and one in elementary education, only 200 miles away. She met a guy at a pizza joint she was also working at and married the guy. She was home visiting her parents when her brother called. He was going to college there too and told her he was stopping by her place but saw her husband and waitress from the restaurant going into the house as he was pulling up. He said he had been sitting outside the house for an hour and she had not come out. Well, her parents and her drove there and walked in on hubby and waitress still in bed. Well, it came to light during the divorce that their intimate life between the two was basically not good. He had somehow convinced this wonderful woman that she was useless and no one would want her but him. After college, she went to work for an oil company, but after a few years, got tired of it and went to chiropractic school. While in school, she met a guy, and they married and set up separate practices. She had a boy, got pregnant with the second one when she found out hubby number 2 was cheating on her with a receptionist. Well, during that divorce, he drove a motorcycle in front of a truck. His parents sued her for both practices and for custody of both kids. She ended up paying them some money to go away. Several years later, she came down with cancer and managed to fight it off, but a few years later, it came back and she passed away from it. Not too long before a class reunion I was hoping to see her at. Story 25. Okay, perspective from an old guy. She married her college boyfriend and has 2 kids. Her career is, I think, not quite what she wanted. but sort of is. That is to say, she wanted to be a lawyer and she did become one, though in a corporate setting. I don't think it was quite where she wanted to be, but it's also not completely off target either. She appears happy, to be honest. The crush I had wore off in college, so I'm happy for her. Another, I think, actually had a thing for me, and we could have had a thing together if we weren't so self-doubting. But whatever, still friends. She's married, no kids. Another, married, had kids, living your standard nuclear family style. Happy for her, too. We reconnected on Facebook and are Facebook friends. The thing is that I really have no regrets because I'm married to a wonderful woman and have 2 great kids. I look at my kids and can't imagine if things were different in the past. They wouldn't be here. I mean, sure, maybe other alternate universe kids would be here. Who can say? What I can say is that I'm good where I am. I'm happy, and my crushes from the past, they're good too. And happy too, I hope. So the story so far seems to be working out well. Key here, don't have regrets if your high school crush didn't work out. Your present and your future are what counts. I can look back and think of all the crazy hormone-driven things I did to try and impress the girls back then, and it's funny. The part of growing up. It's okay that it didn't live the John Hughes movie and ended up with Molly Ringwald. Story 26. He was a grade ahead of me, and I spent my whole junior year totally goo-goo-eyed about him. He graduated, and I still randomly saw him around because we had mutual friends, but nothing came of it. After I graduated, a very tragic event happened that pulled me closer to a group of friends I didn't really see much. One of them was best friends with my crush. Naturally, we started hanging out in groups. Then we eventually started dating. I was over the moon. Over a couple of months, I started seeing what a mess he had become. I was in college, living on my own, working and learning how to be an adult. He lived at home. No shade, we were young, didn't have a job, and relied on his parents for everything. That wasn't that bad. He was always coming up with new ideas and schemes for what he wanted to do with his life. None of them ever panned out. There was a new harebrained idea basically every week. Eventually, I felt like he was weighing me down, and I ended it. We're friends on Facebook, and from what I see and hear from our mutual friends, nothing has changed. He's in his mid-30s and still has no discernible skills or career prospects. I compare our lives now and wonder what I ever saw in him, besides a cute face, which has not aged well. Dodge that one, I feel. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.